In this video, I'm going to talk about the Baby Shark token fiasco that recently happened. I'll give a brief overview of the event, break down some of the key lessons we learned from this, and I'll provide 3 what I call red flag questions you can ask to help avoid these types of projects. As always, this is not financial advice. The views are just my thoughts and opinions and are for entertainment purposes only. So what happened? I have the CoinDesk article linked in the video description so you can read it. But in short, an intellectual property crypto platform called IP.world was selling tokens that seemed to be related to Baby Shark. People bought these tokens thinking it would be a good investment because the platform is known for vetting these types of deals. So you have a platform, IP.world, it has brand trust. It's known for this. And so they had the Baby Shark token that would be related to Pink Fong, except it was discovered later that the actual IP owners didn't approve this token. They had no idea what this was. And the result was a 90% crash from the highs. And so this shows us that in crypto, trusting a famous brand isn't enough to protect you. In fact, sometimes that trust can be used as a weapon to steal from you. I'm not going to talk about how another meme coin failed. Okay, you had brand trust. It led to a Baby Shark token collapse. But we're going to be using this story as a case study on the hidden danger that I call the broken trust chain. And it's a risk that appears even when you think you're dealing with a legitimate name. And understanding its mechanics is crucial for navigating this space safely. And really, it's a lesson that can apply even out of crypto if you're looking for an investment in other areas of life. The first and important risk here is the exploitation of what we call delegated trust. So the token wasn't launched by Pink Fong, the actual brand owner and creator of Baby Shark. It was launched by a licensee, a third party that was given some rights, but critically, not the right to issue a financial token. Investors saw the trusted Baby Shark name and understandably assumed that the project was official. Now, to be clear, licensing is a standard and perfectly legitimate business practice. Here are some prominent examples. When you buy a Lego Star Wars set, you're interacting with a licensee. The Lego group has a license from Disney to create and sell toys based on the Star Wars intellectual property. Similarly, Mattel or other action figure companies have a license to create dolls or action figures, if you want to call it that, based on other characters like Spider-Man here from Marvel. These agreements are very specific. A licensee like Mattel is typically granted the authority to manufacture physical products, use specific logos on packaging, and distribute those products in certain countries. What their authority doesn't include is the right to represent the entire Marvel brand, to open a Marvel theme park. In the context of the Baby Shark token fiasco, to issue a financial instrument like a Marvel coin. And that is the absolute core of this failure. It is a delegated trust exploitation. The danger is that the trust is not always direct. Here, you have 3 entities. You have the brand owner, Pink Fong. You have the licensee, a third party who was never named. And you have the investors. The brand owner gave the licensee some authority. They delegated some trust in the form of a license to the licensee. So the licensee was allowed to perform certain actions with the brand that they licensed. But here we're calling it a broken authority because they didn't use it properly. According to the article, they actually did not realize that they couldn't issue a token. And that's a completely different issue. But at the root of this, there was a broken authority. And you have the investors who have an assumed trust to the brand owner, Pink Fong. They think that they are buying a token that represents Baby Shark, an IP, an intellectual property under Pink Fong. However, what really happens is the actual trust is with the licensee, the third party. And so this chain of trust connecting them was broken from the start. This licensee had a broken authority. They didn't realize that they were doing something that they weren't allowed to do. Okay, the next risk is really platform risk, and it's created by the platform themselves. The token was issued on a platform called IP.world, and it was also promoted that The tokens would be housed on a blockchain called Story Protocol, and together, these platforms specialize in intellectual property, which should, in theory, make them experts in verification. Yet the article quotes IP.world saying they had every reason to believe the launch was fully authorized. This shows that even the platforms involved in launching these assets can get it wrong. So how does this happen? Verifying these authorization chains is incredibly complex. First, they would have to analyze the contractual obligations. This means poring over a legal document that might be dozens of pages long, if not hundreds, trying to interpret vague clauses about digital rights that may or may not have been written before crypto tokens were even a consideration in this license. Second, they might be dealing with a sub-licensee, so even more paperwork. And the company they spoke to might have been licensed by another company who is licensed by Pink Fong. So they would have to analyze these documents, and then there could be another set of documents to analyze. So each step in that chain adds a new layer of complexity and a new chance for misinterpretation. So the verification process that IP.world may have gone through is not a guarantee of legitimacy. It's just another layer of trust that can be, and in this case was, broken. Because at the end of the day, you can't outsource your own due diligence to a platform's marketing claims. You have to be able to determine it yourself. And if you can't access that documentation, you may need to think twice about whether or not this project is something you should put money into. And now let's look at who loses in these situations. And the answer to help you figure that out lies in the term asymmetric information, which just means one party has more information than the other. So in the article, there was a really important piece of information they put. On-chain data showed that there was one entity that bought $10 million worth of the token. That's 7% of the total supply in the very first minute of trading. To the untrained eye, this might seem like a super lucky person, but let's be clear, this is definitely not random. To make a trade like that, you need three things that the average investor, like me, actually I'm below average, does not have. You need to have advanced knowledge of the token's contract address and the exact moment it's going to become available for trading. And second, you need massive capital. In this case, it was 10 million. Even if it was 100,000, while a much smaller amount than 10 million, you still need to have that capital ready to deploy instantly to that contract address at that exact time. And then you need to also have the technical tools, the technical bots, like a sniper bot, to execute the purchase faster than any human possibly could, or other bots that are scanning, because other bots are also looking for patterns potentially to purchase a token as it calculates that there is a rise or growing interest in a certain token. And so these three things, when you factor them together, make the possibility of it being random pretty much zero. This is indicative of an insider, somebody who had privileged information. They would use it to buy the tokens and sell it to everybody else who is now buying into it. So those bag holders are essentially the exit liquidity. So how do you protect yourself from this broken chain of trust? We need a framework that goes beyond just looking at the brand name. Maybe that can be the start of your investigation. But what I believe is that if you ask the right questions and find the right answers to your questions, that sets you up for a better chance of success. And in this case, it's really the success at avoiding these faulty projects to begin with. And so before even considering a project linked to a major IP, you should ask yourself three questions. The first is this announcement from an official IP source? This means the brand owner's main verified X account, their official website, or press release. It shouldn't be from a partner, an influencer, or a crypto news site. Go to the actual source. If it's not on an official IP source, if it's not confirmed by them, it should be a red flag. Second, is the creator the parent company or a licensee? Now, this is important because you have to read the fine print. You have to understand who is the one actually doing this project. Is it the parent company themselves who own the IP? Or is it an unknown third-party LLC you've never heard of? Because that distinction is everything. If it's the parent company, they own all the rights. No matter what happens, they have the full control, legal control of the IP. If it's a licensee, there's very specific things. The third question that you need to ask is, Can you verify the IP ownership through legal documentation? Now, this is very unique in that you're not talking about the IP documentation that can be found on ip.world where they link to you the agreement. No. The IP documentation that I'm talking about is actual proof that the parent company owns the IP, or if it's licensed, you yourself can see the claims that's made. This is probably the most difficult question to answer, and most likely you're actually not going to find it, especially if it's part of a licensee. If it's actually with the parent company itself and you're able to answer the first two successfully, then you can skip this question pretty much. But this question is really important because you have to actually be able to look at the legal documentation yourself and confirm whether or not it's valid. If you are able to answer these 3 red flag questions and there's nothing that seems off to you, then it's a project that you can consider. And then the final point, and it's a critical point I want to make because I've seen this pop up in some of the comments to some of the X posts that are out there, as well as the article itself, is that people think that if a licensee violates the IP, can't somebody just sue and get the money back? The simple answer, and unfortunately, it's no, you most likely will not. Because while the IP is protected by law, trying to enforce it as a small investor in crypto is practically impossible. You'd face anonymous entities, international jurisdictions, and the legal fees would not even come close to allowing you to recoup your original investment. So the legal system isn't actually a safety net. It's there so that the laws can be enforced, but the act of enforcing the law is really not in your favor. It's just there to keep out the bad actors from pulling these things off. But as you can see, it doesn't really happen that way. So the legal system isn't your safety net. Your own due diligence is really the only way you can protect yourself. As always, this is not financial advice, but a tool for critical thinking. So I hope this breakdown was helpful, and thank you for watching.